Hello, and thank you for joining us today. We're delighted to be able to share with you why we believe research and design iteration is so important. I hope you find this session as interesting as we found it and creating it for you. Firstly, a bit about us presenting today. My name is Lisa Moran and I'm the Head of Digital Services at the NHS Business Services Authority. And joining me today are Chris Hewitson and Helen Spires, who both share the role of Professional Lead for Service Design. They provide coaching, mentoring, strategic advice to our organisation and the whole user-centric design community. So who's the NHS Business Services Authority? This is a question we're often asked, although we do deliver a number of services. The Business Services Authority is an arm's length body of the Department of Health and Social Care. We oversee 35 billion of the NHS expenditures annually, and we deliver a range of national services. We process 1.5 billion transactions every year. We're the delivery organisation for government and also the health and care system, providing complex and essential higher volume business services to support the day-to-day smooth running of the NHS. One of the services we provide is a payments platform for primary care services for pharmacists and dentists. We support the NHS People Plan, providing employment, HR, payroll platforms, as well as providing financial support to NHS students and also running the NHS pension scheme. We also provide a range of services directly to the public to help citizens in gaining access to healthcare and the support which they are entitled to through our Help with Health Cost services. So who is the NHS BSA's digital team? I joined the NHS Business Services Authority in June 2015, and we already had a number of online services, as can be seen by the screens below. So these examples here are the prescription prepayment certificates. It's easy for me to say, and it's often shortened to PPC for that reason. The European Health Insurance Card, EHIC card. They were popular services that were already online and had millions of people using these services. The main issues, as you can see from the screen below, was lack of consistency, so the fields, how the forms presented on the screen there, and the colour scheme. They also weren't mobile compatible, and there was a lack of consistency across all of our services. You can see there how vastly different they were. When I joined, I created the user-centric design service, which also started introducing the initial strategy, standards, patterns and toolkits, including job descriptions and a lot of recruitment. One of the main changes was that design decisions were made with consistent research patterns and evidence-based by data and user feedback rather than business decisions or down to the developer left to make that decision. So in March 2018, the Digital Directorate was created, and that allowed multidisciplinary teams to work together on dedicated services to solve problems rather than a specific project which had an end-of-life basis. We now provide a full end-to-end from conception to live services across the digital services. Our team in November 2015 in the user-centric design space consisted of 3 people and supported by a number of contractors when we initially started our digital transformation. So we now have 55 permanent roles in user-centric design across 2 sites, Middlebrook and Newcastle. We've matured really quickly, working with really passionate people to meet the needs of users and business policy. We introduced a number of key roles to support user-centric design delivery, and we're still growing due to the number of services coming across us. The example of our screen, of the screen here, is where we've got the different roles that basically the teams work together and the different roles work together to create the best services possible. And we're going to talk around how our team and service design is structured later on in this presentation. So we work closely across government, sharing patterns, components and problems via communities, and we support different organisations sharing any insight that we might have learned and knowledge. For example, COVID is a key one where we joined together across all of the different organisations working on COVID services to share insight and knowledge. I'm going to hand you over now to Chris, who's going to talk about trainers and why research and design is so important. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. So yeah, I'm Chris Hewitson. I'm one of the service design leads here at the NHS Business Services Authority. I've been in the role for nearly 2 years now. I actually had the interview for this job while I was on paternity leave 2 weeks after my daughter Emily was born. You can see in the bottom left picture there. Around about the same time, I started running, mainly because I had this inherent fear of becoming a fat dad. But I'd also read that running was a great way to help you clear your head after a stressful day at work. And I figured, you know, new role, new dad, let's put those two things together. So I started the role and I started running. And after a while, I kind of got used to both. With the running, I was actually starting to get quite good, to the point where I could run further than my local park run, which is 5K every Saturday morning. Fast forward to this summer, and I've actually run 2 half marathons during kind of the main part of lockdown, just for the hell of it, because I could. And I think along the way, you know, as with anything, you know, you do something for a little bit longer, you want to get better equipment. I wasn't just going to go in there and buy, you know, the first pair of trainers that I found that were, you know, top of the range ones, because at some point I thought the novelty value would wear off. And really, when I was running around the block and I wanted to throw up after 3 kilometers, buying the top of the range trainers probably wasn't the best bet. But now I was running further and quicker than I thought. So what should I go for? I remember, I think it was last year, the shoes that Eliud Kipchoge had run the marathon in under 2 hours. And I thought, well, you know, there's a lot of press about them. There's a lot of publicity. If they work for him, they'll work for me. Now, I'm not saying that I was going to run the marathon in under 2 hours yet, but I had to start somewhere. As with any major purchases, you know, I always do my research. I need to work out what they're going to do for me, why I should pay the silly amount that they sold them for, and probably most importantly, how I was going to convince my wife that these were a good investment for us as a family. I reached the Nike website a few days before they went on sale, and I found a video about them. And I figured that it would be kind of the usual sales pitch, telling me about why I should buy these and why my life would never be the same again once I bought them. But actually what I saw really surprised me. And it took me back to that first week, nearly 2 years ago, where I'd started running and I'd started this role. The world of design and research was suddenly entwined, and everything about running and design and research suddenly made sense. And I want to share that video with you now. And you can see why.
I think the issue will be part of my legacy. I've been giving my honest feedback for the last 6 years. I think I need to leave a mark whereby everybody will learn from it positively.
I'm here in Kenya to work with Eliud, and we're trying to make what was already our fastest shoe even faster. Here you go. My own running influences the way I do my job. I can incorporate that into my conversations with Eliud.
I've come a very long road with Kari. I've run 14 marathons, and I've used 11 different shoes, and now Alpha Fly.
The Global Sports Kaptigat camp is a really special place. I don't think we could replicate the feedback that we're able to get from this camp anywhere else.
Harambe!
Alpha Fly wouldn't be what it is today without Eliud's feedback. He was so instrumental. He started testing prototypes from the very early, very cobbled ones, and he'll usually run 300 to 500 miles in a shoe before he's done with it. He'll keep a detailed journal of what he's doing in the shoe, his likes and dislikes. Sometimes there's drawings. He's just a really methodical person in a way that's so helpful for us.
The upper sole, is it scratching? Is it too elastic? Or is it really rigid? Every day I keep writing the marks from 1 to 10 concerning the comfortability of the shoe, the traction, the absorption of the impact, and the material used. The number one feedback was impact from the ground.
The Alphafly as it is today is really an evolution of all the learnings that came out of the Breaking 2 project. One of the big learnings was the more cushion you can provide to an athlete, the more benefit that they can see. So it helps them run fast without feeling a negative impact of the pounding on the ground. And air was a way for us to provide more cushion, more protection, and only the energy return. The first time we gave him a prototype of the design that we have now, Ellie's reaction was sort of like, wow, this is the future, this is very innovative, and the feeling was cushions. And he said that this meant less impact on his legs. Did you know that all along there was something hiding inside?
Yes, after using it for some time, I realized that there's an air pack inside. You don't feel that pain on your muscles when you step on the hard ground. And that's the beauty of the Alphafly. In Vienna, I ran 1:59.40, but the following morning, I jogged for 30 minutes, which was the first time ever since I started running marathons.
Wow.
It's a long journey, and my future goal is to make this wall a running wall.
I think Elliot thinks very much about the future. He's always very careful to be a mentor to others and not just think of his teammates as other runners, but as people that are going to be their own future leaders someday.
We want to see an athlete who is a human being and a winner.
Our slogan is always teamwork, so it means a lot for us, training together, sharing ideas, encouraging each other. I've learned a lot from Eliud.
Eliud inspired me to work hard, to persevere, and to be disciplined. I want to run tomorrow like Kipchoge.
This is our time to do it for ourselves and for the next generation.
So as you could see there from the video, Nike and Kipchoge didn't just throw these shoes out there for sale. They did their research. They really listened to his feedback as the user. They iterated on their initial concepts. They made prototypes. And based on his experiences of each version of the prototype, they iterated and they improved. They did lab testing. They did a diary study. They got him to kind of note down his thoughts. And eventually it led to a finished product where the changes and additions met the expectations of the user and that he could be the first man to run the marathon in under 2 hours. What I also thought was really interesting was they clearly recognized that they were not the user. Kipchoge and runners are the user. Nike were literally just the people there that were providing the product that was going to serve the user. So they do sketches as part of the video. They do paper prototypes. And there's a lot of what I was thinking as I was watching this video was, we do that, we do that, we do that. They moved on to the working prototypes for him to try and they experiment with, and you know, bits of their prototype probably didn't work, and they got the feedback again from Kipchoge, and they recognized that the prototypes weren't the finished product, but they can quickly get something for him to try and iterate on and to get experience. The diary study as well, I think, is really important because they can understand his behavior long term and keep track of his experiences. Then they move into the lab testing so they can see what happens when they get a functioning version of their product. Which basically made me think, we're the same. We're obviously not, because we're the NHS and Nike and Nike, they sell products for millions of pounds. But after watching this video, I couldn't help but be impressed. And that so much time and effort had gone into something that I just thought was a fad and was a marketing ploy, basically to get me to part with my hard-earned cash. But it made me think that we really do similar things. We have products and services, and we do a similar process for those. We listen to our users, we test things with them, and we follow up on their feedback, and we always look for ways to improve our offerings. They aren't running shoes, and we aren't going to win any races, but we really are making a difference to people's lives. We help them get easier access to their prescriptions. We help them to apply for a role in health and social care, or we can get them faster access to their NHS pension when they've finished working with us. And to talk about the ins and outs of that and the way that we do that, I'm going to pass across to Helen Spires, who's the other service design lead at the BSA.
Thank you, Chris. So we're in a really unique position and the unique challenges of designing for health and care, we've got to ensure that all of our designs are met for such a huge variety of needs and capabilities of the nation. And when we look at research, we often look at looking at services, we talk about end-to-end journeys, which means from the moment a person starts trying to meet their goal right up until they actually do it. And traditionally, work would start on a solution without really understanding the right problem, nor taking a step back to look at somebody's full end-to-end journey. And we just developed a bit of it. So research really helps us get to understand what the true problem is. Often the case we say build the right thing or build the thing right, but actually the greatest skill set, the design research teamization, is that one can say something isn't needed at all, and maybe a change to the business process or one of the current channels would actually bring the most significant improvement. So it's more about doing the right thing and doing the thing right. And it's important that we don't have to build something every single time. So the way that the research and design team work at the BSA, all the researchers and designers are principally focused on understanding what could be the right thing. So moving from the problem to a better understanding of the problem and testing all of the potential solutions, just like Nike. We understand that technology is a lever to help address a human need, and technology is not the outcome, helping the human is. And it's really important to understand NHS has set 9 design principles, which we all adhere to. And by having a memorable set of design principles, help all the various designers, all with unique different backgrounds, understand what is expected from them. That's massively helpful in periods of growth, which we've seen recently. And back in 2017, we attended the Principles Workshop organised by NHS Digital to come together with other designers across the NHS and across government and other businesses with experience for designing for healthcare. We examined what principles are actually for, what makes a good principle and what makes a bad principle, and put together our experiences with design for health and care. And it was a really practical session that ended the day with lots of different options, which were taken forward and ultimately published in the NHS Digital Service Manual back in 2018. So I want to talk about, I'll not talk about all of the principles, but number one, the ultimate principle is put people at the heart of everything that you do. And regardless of their patients, families, carers, or NHS staff, we really need to take the time to learn about the whole person and their emotional and physical and needs at that time. It is really designing for compassion. So services designed around the needs of our users are more likely to be used to help more people get the right outcome for them and therefore achieve the policy intent. And they cost less to operate by reducing time and money spent on resolving the problem. Meeting the user need benefits the users, but it also benefits our organisation. So this is a traditional user needs statement, how you'll most often see them when we document a user need. So it's as a user, they need to do something, so there is a required outcome. But we've started to add secondary statements to it to recommend a thing what each user needs to do to help them understand it a little bit better. So when we use this on the NHS jobs, it's because it's such a complex service with so many different users. It really helps us understand it just that little bit better. A user need is also not an assumption. It's based on evidence that we've gotten by getting to know our users through the various methodologies, just like Nike, maybe that's usability testing or lab-based testing or diary studies. We don't focus on possible solutions. So a user need would never propose a solution. For example, needing a reminder rather than needing an email or a letter. And as we go through the development life cycle, we learn and continually validate these needs. They're not static and they change. So there's lots of different types of needs. For instance, there's the immediate need. I need money so I can feed my family. But then there's also latent needs, something that a user might not directly say. So for instance, again, for NHS jobs, delaying recruitment to means that they have to pay bank staff, which means that they can't get the new machinery they really need to treat patients. And they might not realise that the actual need is to reduce the time to hire people. And also we have perceived needs. And a perceived need may indicate something that we should be considered by the service or a wider landscape that isn't actually being met directly by the service, but we should signpost to the place where these needs can be met. And lastly, no type of need is more important than the other. We've also got variant users. So we use something called a user matrix to help us assess these needs against our users. So you can see from this diagram, we've got end users and primary users, secondary users, internal, societal, and stakeholders. So traditionally, the primary users are the direct interaction with our service, but actually end users and societal users are just as important. So when we think about hiring somebody, an NHS colleague, the primary user might actually be the hospital, but we need to start thinking about the job seeker themselves. But ultimately, the end user is the NHS patient. So we often have discussions around the needs that we're aiming to do before we even start any of the designs. So it allows the design team to really understand what before they start the work. And we display the needs where they're prominent so they can be easily referred back to. It's more important that it works for people. So do what works and not what's popular. So you can't please everybody, but you can make sure that you get the thing done. We do this by using prototypes. And when testing our solution concepts, we use prototypes and iterate based on what our users have told us. And the prototype is quick and dirty and throwaway, and there should be no ego attached to it. We often use design hypothesis to based on an assumption, and then we try to break it. We try to disprove the assumption. And as a result of these experiments, we can tell you really the understanding of our user behaviors and how accurately they understand whether there's potential for pitfalls within your solution. And this is one of the templates that we use. So everybody within the team can understand the insight and the hypothesis and whether the test is proven and whether we need to capture any playback from that. And at the end of every bit of work, just like Nike, we know that this method works, and it works because Chris parted with his hard-earned cash for his trainers.
Yes, I did. I had to after that video.
And I'm going to hand back to Lisa to say how things have changed.
Thank you, Helen. I think one of the key things to reflect on there as well is we couldn't do any of that iteration or prototyping or changing if we didn't have a culture to harness that environment. So a lot of it, Helen touched on about egos, removing egos from something. So if I've got a hypothesis, then I'm open to challenge and change based on, you know, what is evidence-based and findings for that. And we have an environment which allows for that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to iterate if it was an idea that, you know, that people were really precious about. So everything is open to be changed and to iterate. Nobody has like a bad idea, and a lot of that is because of the culture that we've harnessed within the NHS Business Services Authority. And one of the celebrations that we were asked to join on the COVID response, and many of the colleagues across the organisation worked on COVID services, and although the pace was significantly different with ridiculous timescales, which isn't often heard of in Agile, because it wasn't time boxed because we were meeting specific user needs, we actually still continued our ways of working and our processes remained the same. So we still carried out research and design iteration, except they weren't on prototypes, they were actually on live services. But the concept was still the same, and we did change and iterate the content and services as we learned from the users who use the services, but also as policy changed as well. So it demonstrates that actually, as with Nike and as well as with the NHS services, that actually design iteration and research iteration is really valid and important for the success of services. So thank you so much for listening to us today. Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Chris. Hope you've enjoyed this session as much as we have in creating it. We've included our contact details below, so please feel free to reach out to us if anyone's got any queries or anything they want to learn more about. To set up a shared community or anything like that, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.